We'd like to welcome everybody for our webinar today. I'm very excited to be joined with Sid here from Databricks and doing a joint webinar with understanding Databricks and then how SQL DBM can complement and help your organization with your Databricks implementation and your overall data initiative. I'm going to hand it over to you, Sid. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Databricks.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Sid. My name is Siddhesh Pore, but I go by Sid. I'm solution architect in Databricks. I joined Databricks in 2022, but I've been working on data and AI for more than a decade. And it's fun to work on Databricks, right? Because then you end up working on so many new technologies. And specifically, I was too excited when Databricks released a new model, DBRX, which people are using it. So it's fun to know what is happening in industry with AI and as well as helping customer to implement those. But today's topic is data modeling, and that is something many of our customer want to understand how they can build data modeling on Databricks and what are the options, what are the tools available. So we'll definitely jump into some of my customer questions or some of Databricks customer question. But before that, let me give a quick overview on what Databricks is.
Great.
Let me share my
Fantastic.
screen.
Yeah.
I hope you can see my screen. Let me put into slideshow mode. So you used Databricks before, Kit?
Yeah, I've played with Databricks, but I'll be the first to admit that I haven't really gotten too deep into it. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you got going on at Databricks.
Amazing. So I always get this question about what was Databricks and what is now, because we released something called as Data Intelligence Platform early this year. So when Databricks started long back, it was more for machine learning and data engineering. So in general, if I have to put an architecture, Databricks is based on open data lake platform. You have uniform storage available. You can use it on any of the cloud as long as you are on AWS, Google, or Azure. You should be able to use Databricks. Now, on top of that, we have built data governance, and this governance help you to manage all the resources. Will help you to manage all the permissions, not just for the people but also for the resources. And as you see, it is horizontally spread across the platform. You can manage everything. And with use of Unity Catalog, you can do lots of data science. We call it as Mosaic AI. Then you can build ETL in your data layer tables. And once you build those tables, you can package in workflow. And you can also write different queries on Databricks SQL. For today's topic, we will more focused on Databricks SQL and Unity Catalog because that is where most of the data modeling happens. Now, back in June of last year, around Data and AI Summit, we announced that we are going to acquire Mosaic AI. And once we acquired Mosaic AI, we thought, okay, everybody is going towards the AI. Let's rebuild few things and embed AI into our Lakehouse platform. And that is how the data intelligence platform was born. And once we put this Lakehouse AI, right now you have Unity Catalog to manage your permission. You have unified Delta Lake. You have resources to write to your SQL. You have workflows to build different jobs and combine different jobs into the packages. Do the ETL while Delta Lake tables, and it also helps you to build data quality. And then ultimately, once you have everything, build your machine learning models. And it could be LLM or it could be a traditional machine learning models. So we had this thing, we embedded AI solution in between, which is Databricks IQ, which is helping you to do ton of things. And those ton of the things I have tried to list it here. And one of the most used feature by many of the people is text to SQL, where people will go ask something in text and it will be able to convert that into SQL. And everything is rebuilt most of the places, so people will be able to use AI a lot. Now, data governance, in today's world, people will be using many platform, right? They not for the new customer, also for the existing customer. If you look at back of the decade when we started working, everything was on some Oracle database, and then people were using some CSVs and Excel to load their data. And then out of the blue, we heard about machine learning and we didn't know head and tail about machine learning, and we realized, okay, for machine learning we need to use files. So with all that distributed platforms, we need to build something where you can unify all the users and all the data together. So that is what Databricks does. It allows you to provide and establish governance not only on your tables, but it will allow you to build permission on your data lake. You can have same permission on machine learning models and same flows into BI dashboard. So that saves ton of time on admin, because then you create a group, people will be able to get into those group and do whatever they want to do. So this is what Unity Catalog does. And as I was telling, with Mosaic AI, we are able to enhance Unity Catalog. So what we are able to do is you can do context-aware search. You can get end-to-end visibility into your platform. So you can literally find out where is my source and where is my model. And one thing I really like about this overall thing is that you can go into our catalog and search. So you don't have to even know the name of the table. Let's say, the old school example of employee table. You don't have to really know, okay, employee table name to find employees. You can just ask platform, okay, can you tell me a location where all the employee data is available? And it will not just list the table, but it will also list all the employee reports on which you have access. So if you don't have access on few things, it will not be listed. So that is an added security.
Neat.
Now, Databricks Unity Catalog provide ton of features. Uh, One of the feature I really like to highlight here is lineage. Many customers really like lineage, because then if I build a machine learning model, I will know it is built on what source. So you can literally track from source to in between table to the machine learning model. You can audit, you can do the monitoring on your models, on your data. So you can literally find out if you are running a machine learning model, what is the drift? And if you want to set a few permission, you can do it in the centralized way. I'll definitely go over a couple of slides where
Yeah.
I want to highlight some features. But
Can
I
I
know, like, you have been trying Unity Catalog a lot, so I'll
yeah,
I'll open it up for any questions
I
anybody has.
I have a question on like you said on the Unity catalog, and because we work with a lot of clients who are Databricks, obviously, and a lot of them were on Hive Metastore, and now introduced into is the Unity catalog, and do these organizations need to upgrade to Unity catalog, and what is the difference between Unity catalog and Hive Metastore?
Right, yeah. So that's amazing question. Most of the organization need to upgrade to Unity Catalog. The reason for that, because then if you don't have a centralized governance, you cannot manage your models and your data and your AI. What happens is that nowadays people want to use large language models, but then they don't have control on who can access those models and what type of governance these models have and what type of data these models are accessing. To do this into a controllable environment where you can not just own your data but own your AI, Unity Catalog is first steps. Many people, many of our customers are moving from Hive Metastore into Unity Catalog. The major difference I see with the Unity Catalog versus Hive Metastore is that you can pretty much use Delta Lake, whatever you had, but then you can actually have a control on all your data table, right? And there are a ton of feature, like, you can monitor your data, you can audit what is happening in your logs, and you can do a intelligent discovery with the AI. With higher metastore, it is not possible, because then there was no way to have a combined permission.
Great. Right. Thanks for that information. And it looks like we get some questions coming up on this as well, and we'll get to those at the end. So keep the questions
Sure.
coming, everyone. Right.
Awesome. So let me get back to the slides, and couple of things I will highlight. I will not go into all features. There are ton of webinars happening on our website, and people can always reach out for any question. But one feature I really like is data sharing. So I always teach my kid sharing is caring, right? And that is the use of sharing platform where you can share data across. not just your table, but also resources and in secure environment. So you can create clean rooms and make sure only specific people has access. And in fact, you can create a data rooms where only business people or your organization can access those rooms. And it makes life easier. Now people can not just share your data, but they can share models. So we have one of the provider, John Snow Labs. They have ton of AI models, which is used for many of the healthcare customer to research or to aggregate their clinical records. Now, as I was telling, you can do end-to-end monitoring. You can build a dashboard which will be able to tell you how you are using your platform with the cost. This will help for your boss to get your budget approved, right? So you can forecast on how things are going. And AI assistant, I simply love this. You can literally ask questions to AI assistant, as you're saying on the slide, and it will generate not just query, but the Python code as well. And it will help you to debug your code. I've spoken with many customers, and the developer productivity has increased by at least 40% because then you don't have to go to Google or other places to pass your code, and everything is in your environment, so everything is secure. Now, one thing I want to highlight, before I move to DB is we were named leader into Gartner Magic Quadrant into database management system. So that is where Databricks was able to come from left to right and go towards the leaders in last couple of years. So data warehouse, you know, people, even though people say it is not useful, but it is really required when you are building various report. Now we infused AI into our data warehousing, so you can do AI-driven queries. You can type text, you can get the SQL queries, and you can debug. As I was telling before, you can debug using AI assistant, and everything is secure on your Unity catalog, right? So couple of feature I want to highlight on DB again, not going into depth, just to make sure what AI is able to do. At high level, you don't have to define indexes. AI will take care of doing it in the backend. It will automatically optimize for your performance. So it will be able to know, okay, what knobs is need to turn or turn on or turn off to optimize the performance. And it will be able to manage your workloads intelligently. So let's say if you are running 10 different queries and it is running on, let's say, 3 different nodes, it will be able to manage all those workload intelligently, which will help you to improve the performance by 3x, right? So
Um,
these are all those capabilities of AI. And interestingly, there are small models running in the back which will predict what is happening next, and it will manage all your serverless workflows. Right? So we are infusing AI into everything. So you can manage your cost, right? You can manage your docs into Unity catalog. You can build a dashboard literally by asking question in natural language. You can use AI assistant in your query editor as well as notebook, and you can have a room created. We call it as data room where business user can come, and they don't have to spend a lot of time creating a Jira, going through a Jira process and Scrum process to simply add a new column, right? They can simply ask question and they'll get what they want, saving a lot of time on data analyst.
it's amazing how things have changed. I can remember when I started in data and you had to build everything yourself. We didn't even have the ability to Google. So it's amazing how where we've come over at least my career, and where we are today with the AI stuff.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing we read was product manual
Yeah,
and books from Bill Inman, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, this is another feature I like where you can federate, connect to all your different databases. So this is something we actually implemented in one of our customer with whom I'm talking in our Data and AI Summit quick trip, where we are able to connect to different sources without building ETL, connect to those sources, and then you'll be able to have a catalog for those different sources which are outside of Databricks and build a federated query on top of it. Again, with Unity Catalog, it will be all secure. And this is a small example of dashboard where somebody is asking question. You can have data in the backend and type your question and it will build chart for you.
Nice.
Now, uh, there are other slides, but before I go, I'll quickly show what is in our platform. So if you go into the into our platform, you can basically see. the workspace where you can have catalogs created. You can have a SQL queries created on SQL editor. You can build dashboards here, right? And then you can actually do whatever you want to do for data engineering and the data engineering panel, and you can do whatever you want to do machine learning in the machine learning tab, right? And many of the people ask me this question, right? Uh, when you build a machine learning model, right, is there any other way where we don't have to start with the basic? And that is what we have AutoML, which is glass box approach, which will allow you to build a baseline model for you, and then you can move ahead and implement many things. So this is a quick example of a AI assistant. I wrote a query and I was trying to uh, fix it, right? And if I click here, you can actually see how many efforts I had to do and how AI assistant is helping. So I can literally ask any question to AI assistant and it will be able to generate query and it will help me to debug. So for the just the use of how we can build external table, right? So we have two things, managed table and external table. Managed table, which are on Databricks, but external some table are something where you also want other application to access. So I was trying to have a fake S3 URL and see if it is the erroring out. It error out and I asked AI assistant, just clicked here and asked, okay, fix the code. And it was able to give me some input on how I can fix the code. And definitely people can use it quickly and it will give you the relevant output so you can simply copy paste your code.
Wow.
Now for today's session, yeah, go ahead, Kit.
I would say, so the days of trying to find that missing comma that spends so much of your time um, goes away.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, if you are to write new code, if you ask Google, it will give you generic example. Here you can specify table name and your code is ready with your comment.
Wow, it's fantastic.
So for today, I think for our catalog, these are the tables we'll be using. So if you talk about catalog, I created a catalog for SQL DBM. I can set up permission the way I want, and then there are different databases. And we will focus more on, marts and products today. I'll let you go more into depth about this databases, but this is something how it will look in Databricks when you start building on Databricks and when you try to, do the forward engineering or reverse engineering in SQL DBM.
Right.
Right. And lastly, I just want to cover one thing is like Databricks work with ton of other platforms. So there is a good integrations of entire data and AI ecosystem. And you asked me question, right? But then I probably have more question from my customers to you, right? We really
Yeah.
want to understand how we can build dimensional modeling on Databricks in SQL DBM, how we can do reverse and forward engineering. And we will come back to other questions once I realize. But then medallion architecture plays a very important role. So if you can highlight few things about medallion
Yeah.
architecture, that will be super helpful. So I'll
Yeah. No.
stop sharing my screen and hand
Yeah.
it
Go
over to
ahead,
you.
and while you're stopping to share your screen, I just have one last question for you. So, as organizations are starting with Databricks, and I've seen many technologies and platforms succeed and fail. What kind of recommendations, like your kind of top recommendations for anybody new going into Databricks, so that they have a successful implementation of the solution?
Sure, yeah. I will say you can do a couple of things. Always start with doing some POCs on the platform, right? One very important is if you are starting new, start with Unity Catalog. That way you can build the governance on your system. Many of the people try to do things on high metastore and they push back Unity Catalog. Rather decide, okay, how you want to approach to the problem. Second thing is you don't really need to start a SQL warehouse for 10 hours to run one query, which is going to run for 1 minute.
Yeah.
So start using serverless. Databricks does provide capability to use serverless warehouses. We are also releasing serverless notebooks. So start with serverless. So that way you can save total cost on ownership, right? And I think lastly is when you build any jobs and workflows, we also do provide serverless options. So when you are building jobs, make sure you use serverless instances to run the jobs. And lastly, I feel is, when you are using so many tools, right? you are always confused how to do, right? Rather than doing lots of Google, Databricks does provide a good documentation. So any documentation out there are good for best practices. Start with best practices. That will help you to understand, okay, how to implement few things rather than, doing something and then figuring out how I can set up best practices in. And there are a ton of customer stories and solution accelerator available, trainings going on. So where you can actually start understanding how to implement few things and start with slow and then expand it further, right?
Great. Great. No, thanks for that info. And as I share my screen, um, some of the things you had even just mentioned, Sid, that I will try to highlight in terms of when we start showing SQL DBM, we talk about best practices and things to get the most out of Databricks. So again, everybody. So I'm Keith Belanger. I don't think I formally introduced that. I'm the product evangelist here at SQL DBM, and um, we're going to be talking about SQL DBM, which is a modern, fully cloud-based data modeling solution. Now, when I say modeling, and I know Sid was talking a lot about AI models and ML models. Here are the models that we're going to be talking about are relational models, the designing of that database platform and the data structures behind the scenes inside Databricks and how you can best use SQL DBM to help you with that architecture and even the visualization of what's going on inside that database platform. So just to kind of give a little bit about what is SQL DBM. So like I said, we are a fully SaaS cloud built on the cloud data modeling solution. So there's nothing to install. There are no keys to manage. All you need is a web browser, and you're able to leverage SQL DBM. A lot of the capabilities, and I'm not going to read this word for word, but mostly a lot of our focus is data modeling isn't anything new. It's been around for a very long time. We talked about, Sid mentioned Kimball, that was in the mid 90s. Now you've got like Medallion. There's a variety of architectures and methodologies, but what has changed over the years is how organizations, probably like how many of you are operating out there, you could be doing data mesh, you could be decentralized teams, you could have federated data sources. You being collaborative, you're using Agile in Jira. So the current data practice has a lot of different methods that they're using compared to what were done years ago. And so how can we introduce a tool to can accommodate so that data modeling doesn't become a bottleneck, that it is not a hindrance to meeting the needs of your business? And that's a lot of what our focus on is in how we're evolving the SQL DBM product. So, how does it relate to modeling for the lakehouse, right? So one is collaborating with your stakeholders. So as in today's like practices, you could be working with different domains, having different needs in different data engineers or architects working together. So SQL DBM allows that collaborative capability. So more than one person can be interacting with the modeling tool. Databricks in general is just what are the special features and the uniqueness of Databricks that you would want to make sure you're taking into consideration when you're doing your data modeling, whether it be, external tables or types of indexing or data types and stuff like that. Our tool makes sure that when you're working with a Databricks, you're leveraging those capabilities. And then the visualization and in the changes in the tracking. So as you're creating that model, Sid kind of showed a screenshot of what those, tables look like, but they were just a list of tables. How do they relate to one another? What's their definitions? What columns are in there? And so on and so forth. And being able to visually see that and also document that. So again, I'm going to really accentuate the concept of, many people in collaboration within your organization. Oftentimes some older legacy modeling tools, unless you went to that one person who had the data modeling tool, you can see or understand here what SQL DBM, whether you're, somebody who's an analyst, you're a DBA, you maybe on the data governance team, all of those folks would have access and the ability to contribute or read or understand what's going on inside of SQL DBM. We have what's called concurrent modeling. So much like when you're doing application or development and your coding, we have a similar approach in terms of model changes. So if multiple people need to be modifying the data model at the same time with our concurrent working, you can have separate branches so people can be doing the modeling exercises they want. And as you merge, we basically go through a conflict resolution process to make sure that once you're in that main branch, that your model is whole and complete to the way you need it, even though you've provided multiple people the ability to contribute to the model at the same time. The other part, and Sid, you kind of brought it up, and I really like to talk about, this isn't necessarily a product thing, but this is kind of just an understanding thing, is also we hear about people, process, and technology. And we're talking about SQL DBM as a technology, but we also have a framework that we can share that really talks about what are the things you need to do around a modeling solution, or even a Databricks, in terms of like how you're going to manage your models and handle change. What are the roles and responsibilities in your organization? Who can create tables? Who can modify tables? So that you don't have a lot of people just playing around in different areas and building that inconsistency. Governance, and I'm not talking about just like data governance, but governance over your architecture, governance over your design. What are those rules? What supporting technologies? What technologies are in play? You got Databricks, you got SQL DBM. Do you have any type of project management solution, CI/CD solution? Really understanding what role all those technologies are playing in that overall data modeling process. Communication and collaboration. Again, with SQL DBM, we try to do all we can to improve communication and collaboration, but what tables are changing? What's the impact to BI reports? Are you adding new columns? Are you removing columns? Understanding and communicating that out in documenting is important. Then the quality. When I talk about quality, we often talk about data quality. I'm talking about model quality, your actual data design quality. Are you using the same data types for, financial fields like amounts? Are you using the right types of timestamps? Are you using the right type of primary key columns? Having that quality and that design and that consistency will help your performance, will help your usage. And then so all of this together, I think, are important to have going around, whether it's your Databricks implementation or even your SQL DBM implementation. So I'm going to pause here for a second, and I'm just going to quickly go into SQL DBM itself. And again, don't hesitate, folks, to put questions in the Q&A, and we'll try to answer them when we get to the end. So here's my dashboard for SQL DBM, and this would have all of the models. So whether in this case, it could be for a Databricks, you might even be doing models for, in this case, I'm showing a SQL Server, a variety of solutions within inside your organization. So what I'm going to do is create a brand new project, and I'm actually going to start with what Sid was showing. So Sid was showing that he had that SQL DBM, in his catalog, and then we had those schemas within there. So what I'm going to do is go to Databricks, and we're going to say, hey, we have an existing Unity catalog inside Databricks, and I want to first understand what we have inside there. You haven't started from the beginning with SQL DBM, but now you have something in place and you want to bring it in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect directly to the Unity catalog. You can see here, even if you're not on Unity catalog and you've got your engineering cluster, you can connect to that as well. But here I'm going to connect to the Unity catalog, and I'm going to get my server name and then my token. So just let me get that info. And once I put this in place, we're now going to connect directly to Unity catalog. It's going to then tell me what catalogs I have available to me. I can see that SQL DBM demo that Sid had shared, and he had talked about the marts and the product schemas. So I'm going to now bring that in. We're going to now bring that metadata from Databricks, and now we brought it into SQL DBM. And now what do I want to do with it? So I'm just going to say on the far right, I want to build a diagram for each schema. So we picked two schemas. Let's build the diagram. And then I'm going to keep all of the objects. I can turn them off if I wouldn't want them. And I'm going to import it in. So now we've brought those in. You can see that we've created a diagram for the product in the marts. And right now they're kind of just all piled together. But let's kind of just, clean them up a little bit here. And then, so now one thing I'm going to kind of make a, a kind of a point here. If you've gone from the Hive Metastore to Unity Catalog, in Hive Metastore, you wouldn't have had these types of relationships, defined inside the Unity Catalog. You can. So in a lot of scenarios, you would get something like this. All of these kind of like orphan tables, not really understanding what there's there. So hold on a second. I'm just going to save this so I don't lose what I've done. And I'm going to do Keith demo. So one of the things we have is what we call suggested relationships. So if you've reverse engineered this database, so in this case, like we've reverse engineered those two schemas, I can, based on patterns, and we have some default patterns, but you can configure these patterns, what you want to look at and exclude. I can have it search and analyze and say, hey, we think these should be some of the primary keys. Let's create those. Oh, and by the way, can you suggest, what do you think the relationships are between these objects? And again, it can find those and we can say, yes, let's create those relationships, right? And so now if I lay it out, you can now see we have a much better understanding and picture of how all of these tables relate inside of Databricks. So now what we've done, right, is we've taken that list of objects, right? So if I go here and I just say, what's the list of tables? We've got this list of tables that you had inside Databricks, but now what we're able to see is how it all relates to one another, and you can start really getting that understanding. So a couple of things I want to kind of go through about SQL DBM here is one is you can create as many diagrams as you want. So maybe you get a very large implementation but you have stuff around sales and you have stuff about like finance or even, operations. You can create diagrams, as many different visuals and representations as you want. If you want to just change it, so maybe you just want it to just show the name of the tables and the description of those tables, the definitions of them, or maybe you just want to know what the keys are, or you want more of a logical perspective. Again, a variety of ways you can share and document with your consumers or even your engineers or other people with inside your organization. You can change the way, maybe you want to your notation. You want your crow's feet, or maybe you don't want things to be in color anymore for your data types. Again, a variety of things you can do. You may have noticed while I'm doing the work and while I'm playing around, it's up in the upper left-hand corner, version 3, everything you do inside SQL DBM is version. So even if I was to add a new table, because I'm going to make a new table, and I hit save, you'll see it goes to version 4. All of that revisions history's here. So what was the difference between version 3, version 4? I created table 11, right? So everything you're doing inside SQL DBM is being versioned off. So a couple of things. I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that you had, Sid, at the beginning. So a couple of the things, how do you do consistency and standard in making sure that what people are doing and designing is consistent? One is with naming conventions, right? You can sit there and say, we want everything to be uppercase. Maybe you want all of your tables to end in _T, right? Or something like that. Maybe you want the word customer to always be cust, right? Again, all of these things you can do to define those standards. I like to say the guardrails to make sure if you have 1 or 10 people in here doing things that you're holding true to that standard. And then you could say you want to validate when you're doing the saves, right? Or maybe I want to apply these standards right away. And again, these are things that you can put in place to make sure that, again, one or many people those models are being consistent across the board. To kind of also continue on, you had brought up, for example, like Data Vault or even Kimball. Like, what are some things you can do? There's a couple of things in here. One is column templates. So with our column templates, you can say, I want these metadata columns on every single table, right? So if you create these templates and you apply those templates, so maybe you want to have when was it loaded, when was it last modified, what was the source system or whatever that might be, whatever columns or metadata, you start looking at Data Vault or you start looking at Kimball, they usually kind of have those standard metadata columns you want. Why wait for somebody to manually type them into every table? You can create those column templates. Then we have what we call table templates. So we have some sample ones out of the box, and you talked about Data Vault. Data Vault's very much pattern-based. Hubs, links, satellites, pit tables, bridge tables, is you can basically define the skeleton, and we use YAML script here, of what you might want that to be. So if I had, so for example, say this was a source orders table coming in and I wanted to create, a hub table or a dimension or a type 2 dimension off of that, I can click on that template and then instantly generate a table, right, based off of that sort table, and then tweak it, right? So it really much is the ability to accelerate, the ability to create patterns that you want. I mean, these are sample ones, but maybe your organization has specific types of patterns that you want to use over and over again. You can create those templates. And again, I like to say it's an accelerator because it accelerates versus me going, add table, and then I start typing all of this in manually, and 10 minutes later, you have something that looks like, what I did within a matter of seconds with our templates. So this is really where you can start. If you want to model, if you're doing medallion architecture, right, you might sit here and say, maybe I want a subject area for my bronze, a subject area for my silver, project subject area for my gold. You could do that. Maybe you have standards you would want for each area. Again, you can start to configure how you would want this to look. Now, the other thing I want to kind of bring up, and you sit in your demonstration or portion of it, you had talked about the federation of data coming from other different sources. And, pretty much everybody who's probably using Databricks is not the system of record, right? It's not where the data is coming from. It's coming from other source systems. So maybe you want to, in your model, understand where some of that is coming from. Or maybe you're even doing a data mesh and you have multiple different domains using Databricks in different catalogs or different things. We have what we call global objects. Global objects will allow you to reference objects from other projects with inside SQL DBM. So for example, I showed that SQL Server point of sale system, and maybe I have in here I'll just bring in over the product table, right? Or the transaction, let's see what's here, the sales detail, right? So say the sales detail is what is making up that orders, fact table. And if I add this object in, you can see now that if I wanted to, I am now showing on my model that this table, right, which by the way happens to be an external table because I can look, it's a got a little cloud on it. But now I'm showing, hey, by the way, this came from SQL Server in this particular point of sale system. So you can start to really show and understand how data is being used in your organization graphically. If I wanted to add any type of comments, I can even add comments here about it. And even if this was, say, a different Databricks environment, but people are federating across, you can even show that there's a relationship between these. So again, all these features to start understanding how data beyond a single, in this case, we're looking at one catalog, beyond that catalog, how that data can relate to one another. So you could have a project that's got your bronze layer, a project that's got your silver layer, and a project that has your gold layer, but you could still model and reference across those different implementations. So really is like when we talked about the beginning about, thinking and planning in your strategy is, well, how do you best want to use SQL DBM? Do I want to have multiple projects for my bronze, silver, gold? Do I want to have one project in SQL DBM with multiple subject areas? And there's a lot of things that you take into consideration, but the flexibility is there. So
That's
when I'm
super awesome. I mean, I really look at this. I really like the black UI. And apart from that, many of the time people forget adding comments. So it's good option to have people add comments. And I also like that, you are not only focused on managed tables, but you're also allowing people to create external tables where they can go and start using those tables.
Exactly. So if I click on a table to the far right, you can see the parameters and what you can do. So like I said, what you can do with these tables is based off of what Databricks allows. So in case, for example, external tables, we can see here that this table is an external table, and you can see to the far right here are the locations of that, the file format, and so forth, right? So all of the information. So if you want to understand what's going on with this external table, if I wanted to create a brand new external table, right? So it's not only that we're showing an image of what is inside Databricks at the moment, you can also design and start fresh. You can build new tables, you can build new child tables. I can modify this table, right? So if I wanted to add a new column. So all of that design and work and that development can be done right in here and then kind of deployed over to into Databricks, which I do want to kind of show quickly. I'm going to leave this particular project, and I have another project that's a little bit more kind of built out. And so I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and you can see when I was doing that sharing, I was basically all these projects that are identified as global are the ones that we can share across. So it didn't matter that it was Oracle or SQL Server or even multiple Databricks environments, you can still model across. What I want to show you is this project at the top, which says Databricks
One quick
Webinar.
question I had, like
Yeah,
global object is specific to a project or you can share across many projects?
you can share across many projects, right? So the minute you
That's
turn it,
amazing.
so the minute you turn it on as global, that means you're making this project available for other projects to reference. So like I said, it doesn't matter if it's SQL Server or Oracle. If you're federating, so you had a perfect example, you're federating across. Well, how do you know how that table in Oracle should join to that table inside Databricks? Well, here you can show it. You could literally show this is the relationship. Join on product key equals, product ID or something like that. And you can document and share that. We're going to be coming up also what we're calling global lineage, where you'll be able to do source to target type of documentation and say, this is coming from here to there, and you're trimming it, you're doing this to it. So again, being able to document and understanding your data ecosystem. So we talk a lot about collaboration. So when working with these projects, you can see here, this one, I have multiple teams, multiple squads, all working on the same project, right? So if I was to go in here as a squad, this squad, and I'll just quickly go in and just kind of demonstrate. If I go in as this squad and I just go in and say the stores table, and let's just add a new, store location, and let's just make it a string. Just real quick. So we added one table, I save it, and now I'm done my work, and I want to now merge it to the main, right? So now what's going to do is going to compare, well, what's in my branch versus the main branch, right? If I click on it, it's going to show us that, you added this new store location that wasn't there. So we're really going to go through, we're even comparing again those global objects. Do you have global objects? Are they impacting? And also on that global objects, you're kind of building a contract with that other project. If they modify that table that you're referencing, you would be notified that that object that you're referencing in your project has been done. So you can see here that Squad 5 is now merged to the main branch. If I go now back to the dashboard and I go to the main branch, let's just go into the main branch. So now this main branch is, I like to say, it's the golden copy of the model. This is now where you can start doing all of your data ops. So any changes you've made, regardless to say that afford Databricks, and now you want to implement those changes into Databricks. Let me kind of go through that process. So we have our environments, right? You can set up like, so I'm right now pointing to say a development environment of Databricks, but maybe you have a QA and a prod. You can set up those connections. And then what you can do is you can say, here's my model. So the most recent merge I just did, right? I just did that new column. I can compare that to Databricks, right? And you can sit here and say, hey, by the way, you added this new store location. That does not exist in Databricks, right? Great. I want to push this to Databricks. Generate me the code to do that. And you can see here that you're going to get the code to alter what you need to do, whatever changes that I've made since compared to that Databricks. And then I could take this code in it. Right now, I'm not showing that I'm integrated into a code repository, but if you're using a Git repository and a CI/CD pipeline, you can take this code, deploy it into your Git repository, and then eventually into your CI/CD pipeline. So again, the ability to understand what's going on, between your environments. If I could even compare Databricks Dev to Databricks Prod, if I had that connection. So again, not only can you understand what you've done for changes, but you can also compare it and deploy those changes out. I know we're getting tight on time, but other things you can do is obviously all of your documentation. So you can document what you're doing. If some people out there are using, say, for example, DBTs for doing some of that ELT stuff within Databricks, you can also you can add those DBT properties into here as well. So you can load that. It will generate YAML, and you can push that YAML over to DBT. All of this you can generate a report. So understanding what's inside your metadata. All of this can be shared with your consumers. And speaking of consumers, they can also partake in the party as well, because if they want to come in and add a comment, they can come in and add a table, and if they want to, they can also reference another person and say, can you look at this table, right? So again, you can have this interaction between can you add me this? Can you do that? And all of this collaboration is captured with inside SQL DBM. And you don't have to be a modeler. You could just be a consumer and say, hey, can you add customer shoe size to the customer table? We need that for analysis. So I'm going to pause there, and we're kind of coming up on like 10 minutes, and I would love to get, I don't know if Sid, if you have any other questions, or I know we also have the QA stuff, and I think Ratinder, you've been monitoring some of that, and so I don't know if we wanted to kind of hit some of those questions that people might have.
I think most of the question are answered.
Oh, you answered them
Uh,
all? Okay. You've been busy on the side.
I'll give that credit to Ratinder. She answered most of the question.
Yeah, but
But
yeah, I
one
mean,
question I had, like, the similar thing you asked me, right? Any new customer is coming and want to implement using SQL DBM, what are the strategies they can use, and what are the best practices we should follow while building any data model?
yeah, and I'm going to bring this kind of back up. When new customers are coming on board, this is one of the things that we talk with them. And I've done presentations and events, and we actually have a downloadable document on this that we can share with folks. But to me, again, it's really putting that framework and taking your time and understanding, what's the use case? What data platforms are you in play? How are you structured? Are you guys in Agile? Are you doing data mesh? And really understanding, I showed how you could share projects. Are you doing everything in one project? Do you need multiple projects? Do you need groups and squads and standards? So it really is, for me, is this framework is, you can get the licensing and this jump in, but, take a pause, think and say, how do we want to leverage this tool? Like I said, how I did data modeling in 1996 versus how I do data modeling now is dramatically changed in terms of like how organizations operate. And so if you want to get the most out of your SQL DBM solution, then have that strategic discussion and understand, how do I best use templates and standards and global reference and documentation, and we can even integrate with Jira, and so all kinds of other things like that. So that's to me is, again, almost similar to what you said. Start small and work your way up. Don't just go in and say, hey, I'm going to reverse engineer this 10,000 table and just off you go. So
That's amazing. So I remember I spoke with your team a year back, and from that time, ton of changes are done. So I would really like to, you're on the right slide. So I really wanted to understand what is next. I'm pretty excited to know how else you're going to help many of our data analysts and
yeah.
data engineers.
Absolutely. And so here's, it's on a little timeline, but this is in no particular order. But global modeling is going to continue to grow. I demonstrated global reference, but we are also going to be introducing global search. We're kind of similar to like you were saying, like, well, how do I find where the customer table is or where the employee table is? If I have all these projects, how do I search across? So something similar to what you were talking. So that global standard. So right now, I showed you could set up those standards in a particular project. We're going to allow to sit there and say, well, maybe at the enterprise level, we want those standards to be kind of trickled down, defined once, used many times. Um, we're going to be in the Databricks table templates. By the way, as I'm saying this, they just went out like yesterday or the day before. So this one that says Databricks table templates, that was just released this week. I actually showed those in the demo here, but that was a new feature that we just introduced to Databricks. Logical modeling, and that says, well, what do you mean logical modeling? That's been around forever. Again, new ways of looking at logical modeling. I think one of your questions, like, well, what if somebody's going from SQL Server to Databricks, right? With
Yeah.
SQL DBM, you could reverse engineer that SQL Server physical model, convert it to a logical model, and then convert that logical model to a Databricks physical model. So we're doing a lot of stuff in terms of being able to logically model and conceptual model with database agnostic, right? So I can design my model and say, implement that in Databricks or implement that in another. And so a lot of more different features in terms of like, you can do logical modeling today, but for example, you're if you're doing a Databricks project, it's tightly coupled with Databricks, where here we're going to kind of give that option to do logical modeling agnostic. So um, in reverse engineering and importing from Excel spreadsheets, importing from JSON files. So a lot of people are familiar with JSON files. Domains. What I mean by domains, you might say we want every time there's an amount column it to be decimal 9,2. So that type of stuff. Subtypes, super types, and a lot of in our API. So because we're fully in the cloud, um, you know, this data metadata is not sitting on a file in your own. We have this in our repository, so you can now leverage an API to get to this metadata. So if you, like I said, if you wanted to automate that DDL from SQL DBM into a Databricks through our CI/CD pipeline, you could even leverage our API. And we're going to be looking the ability to post. So you can go the opposite way if you want to put information inside or post information inside of SQL DBM. Global lineage, which will, if you want to start showing, column level lineage, like data went from this column to this column from a documentation perspective. Enhancing the ability to, like, for example, our diagrams. Maybe people want to put that diagram on a data governance solution that's out there, and they want to put an iframe on it. So we're looking to do iframe so that you can share the diagram. So, and many, many more things to come. This is just kind of a spot list of things, but because we're a SaaS solution, we're constantly evolving every month, at least one release, sometimes more. And we evolve our product based off of the needs of our clients and the feedback that we get. So yeah.
Cool. There's one question. You want
Yeah.
to check that? Probably you can answer it live.
Yeah, where is the
Yeah, okay, if you like, I can read the question.
sure, go for it.
How are the models in SQL DBM reflected in Databricks when doing all the ETL in Databricks? So how can the two tools be tied together in a end-to-end workflow?
So it's a great question. From a SQL DBM perspective, you will see the sourcing table and probably the target table, right? So, but what's happening between the source and the target in that ETL process, we would not have inside SQL DBM. So if you were taking data from, say, the party table coming from a source and you're populating a customer table, we would have the model of the two tables and the data types and the columns in there and the definitions, but we would not have any type of visibility of what was happening in the ETL process, unless the ETL process was like a procedure or something like that that we do bring in. But again, that would just be syntax of a code. It wouldn't be graphically represented.
Yeah. Something to add on to it. I think two things will help you here. One, SQL DBM allows you to create multiple projects, so you can integrate all those projects with Databricks. And second thing is CI/CD, which will help you to keep track of what is happening. So whatever you need in between ETL, you can always use Databricks tables, which are system table to identify the lineage. You can also see the UI and build a dashboard down the line, which will give you understanding on what is changed in those tables, right? So I think build a dashboard on Databricks to identify what is changed, and then for all your data modeling, keep into SQL DBM, integrate everything on your DevOps.
Great, thanks. And I know we only have a minute or two left, but the last thing, we want to let everybody know is if you're going to be at the Data and AI Summit with Databricks, we are going to be there as well. We're going to be at booth 20. So please, come by, stop by, say hi. and come check out SQL DBM, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. But with that, I think, that kind of concludes our webinar for today, and we thank everybody for joining. Thanks, Sid, for
Sure.
being here with me, and yeah, thanks everybody. Hopefully we'll see you
Awesome.
guys
I'm
at
pretty
Summit.
excited for future roadmaps. So, look forward to do more sessions and meet more people to, grow the awareness into data modeling. But feel free to, if you guys find us on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out and somebody will be able to help.
Absolutely. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank you.
everybody. Thanks, Sid. We'll talk to
Thanks,
everybody
Ved.
later. Bye.
Thanks, Satinder. Bye.